In this video, we'll discuss the billing portion of TPS. The billing tool in TPS is incredibly powerful and yet incredibly simple to use, which is good news for you, our clients. So let's jump right in and select the icon that opens the billing screen. Up here at the top, we have a folder with a HCFA coming out of it. When I click it, it opens the most recently created billing batch. I can create new billing batches by hitting the plus icon out here, and then clicking yes to enter new data for a billing run. Here I have a blank billing batch with no data created for it yet. We'll change that in just a sec. First, I'll get started by clicking Billing Type and selecting Regular Bill. What we're about to do is create a regular bill batch full of patient statements. So I'm going to select Bill to Patient Statements. Level is not required, as patient statements don't bother with primary, secondary, or tertiary. Here we have the minimum bill amount and the maximum bill amount. Bill date is automatically populated with today's date and can be changed if necessary. Start date and end date are the date ranges that TPS looks for as far as service visit dates when it's pulling services into the billing batch. It's recommended that you keep this first start date open so that you can catch any unbilled services. The end date automatically goes to 1 day before the current date, assuming that you don't want to bill out services that you've rendered that same day. When ready, click Create Bills, and we can pick the criteria further. Here we can select which businesses and providers we want to bill for. I'm going to go ahead and select all of them. And then these two are grayed out because they pertain to the carriers, which we're not doing yet. This last tab lets us select our patients. If I wanted to, I could select multiple patients, or I can simply just click Select All to run my billing for all patients. Once ready, I can hit Create Bills, yes, and then wait for my batch to create. Now, that was really quick, but we don't have a lot of data in this train set, and as you start to gain data for your system, this can take a little bit longer than 0 seconds. So be patient because sometimes it can take a few minutes. Here we have our patient statement bill batch. We have our form type, a carrier, which isn't present because these are patient statements, the patient's name, the claim, business, the total billed amount, which is a total for all the services billed, and then the expected amount, which is the amount that the patient alone is expected to pay. So this means that some other portion is being picked up by the carrier, whereas the patient only needs to pay $16.44. The batch number this bill is created in, the actual bill number, and the billing provider information. Over here on the left, we have the print column. When we check the boxes off in this column, we indicate that these are the bills that we actually want to print once we hit the Print Bills button. Alternatively, we can select this All button here to select all of them at once, or None to select none of them. Expected greater than $0 will select only patient statements who have an expected amount in this column greater than $0.00. Here we can see that the $16.44 is selected, but the $0 here and here has been passed over, so it will not be printed when we hit the Print Bills button. Tag EB and No EB pertains to electronic bills and will tag electronic bills or remove tags from electronic bills respectively. The Bill Summary button, when clicked, will allow you to print out a list of all the bills in this batch. Bill Details will give you some detailed information about the services in a neat report layout. Here we can see the first person in the list, all the services they're being billed for, and some information about them. Here we have Preview Bill, which when selected will give us a preview of the bill. What you see right here is a very basic patient statement, and only one of the many that we offer within TPS. Here we have labels, which allows you to print mailing labels for all the patients located in this batch. Here we have the Print Bills button, which, as mentioned before, when clicked, will print all bills where the print column has a checkbox in it. Off to the right here, we have the Align button, which will change the alignment of the statement if needed, and the Edit Layout button, which opens the underlying layout of the statement, allowing you to make certain edits. In the bottom right here, we have the HIPAA electronic billing buttons, Export and Import. If you're doing electronic HIPAA billing, that is, the 837 and CX12 formats, both professional and institutional, you can contact us here at Eon Systems for extra information in regards to how to set that up. Let's go ahead and look at some of the other statement layouts. Here we have the patient statement layout. When I click the drop-down, you can see there's quite a few choices. We here at Eon strongly recommend the patient statement laser printer layout with adjustments, as it gives quite a bit of information. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Here we can see at the very bottom a breakdown of some of the money. Here we have the insurance portion, the patient portion, on-account credit, and the total outstanding. That is the patient portion and the insurance portion minus the on-account credit. Here we have current, over 30 days, over 60 days, and 90 days and older. Currently, all the balance is 90 days and older. Over here you see a message that says call us today, account is seriously past due. This message generates automatically when account balances have reached 90 days or greater. This is set up within the business information section and is gone over in the how to set up TPS CD. At the top here, we can see a section that says pay this amount, which says $16.44, which is the amount owed by the patient. Below that there's a message saying above amount reflects outstanding patient balance or payment plan amount due, so it includes a couple things. Scrolling down, we can see the section displaying the services and all the pertinent information such as description, date, doctor, etc., etc. Here we have the patient due column, $10, $6.44, amounts to $16.44 that we see up here. I'll go ahead and close out of this preview. Now that was simply a basic patient statement billing batch. Let's go ahead and tackle some carrier billing. Start a new batch by hitting the plus button, clicking yes. We're going to do another regular bill. This time we're going to bill to the carrier and or attorneys. Here we have the minimum bill at $10. If you want to remove that, simply highlight it and delete it. We're going to leave our start date open again so that we can catch any and all bills up until yesterday. And here we have the level that can be primary, secondary, or tertiary depending on which level of carriers we want to bill out for. Hit create bills. We're going to select all providers, and now we can see that these tabs are no longer grayed out. We can select by carrier type, or we can select the individual carrier. It's a personal preference depending on the biller or the office, so do whichever is more comfortable for you. We're just going to go ahead and select all the carriers. One thing to note, not every carrier has a type. If you haven't specifically designated a type to the carrier, selecting all carrier types may still not select all the carriers. We're going to select all the patients, hit create bills, and then click yes. We have 14 bills created in 2 seconds. And here we can see that the column for carrier/attorney has now been filled out with the appropriate information. If I expand this form type column, we can see that the carriers have their default form types in this particular column. For most of these carriers up here, it's simply the CMS 1500 General. If I scroll down a bit though, and go to Medicare, we can see that their default form type is the CMS 1500 Medicare. The Department of Labor and Industry is the Workman's Comp and Liability. The cash patients simply have a general billing form. You can set these by going into the carrier master listing when setting up the carrier. Let's go ahead and do a quick preview. As you can see, this layout is very similar to the CMS layout. In fact, it's identical. When I print this, as long as I have a red HCFA or a CMS form in the printer, this will all print out onto the correct boxes. If we scroll down a bit, we can see line 24 here, and then box 33 right here. One thing to note is that if I were to run another regular billing batch immediately after this one, I would get no bills found. This is because once a bill has been created for a service, it cannot be billed out via a regular billing batch again in TPS. I would have to run some sort of tracer or rebill to get it to create again within the same batch. You don't want to have to accidentally come across it 2 years later in a batch, send it to a carrier, and then get a rejection on a service that was 2 years old. To show you an example of what I'm talking about, if I create another batch and choose the exact same criteria as before, gotta blank this out first. Select all, create bills, yes. We see that no bills have been created. As I mentioned before, once a service has been billed out once, the only way to get it in a new batch is to either delete the old bill or to run a rebill or a tracer bill. Speaking of tracers, let's go ahead and run a tracer and then run a rebill. Before we do, I don't want this batch anymore because there's nothing in it of worth, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it by clicking on the minus up here. And I'll select yes. When deleting billing batches, the billing screen automatically closes afterward. We simply have to reopen it by pressing the icon at the top. And now we can create our tracer. This time for billing type, I will select tracer. Going to do it to carrier and attorneys. Now what a tracer does is that it searches for unpaid carrier charges which are over a certain amount of days due. Depending on the state you live in, there could be laws allowing you to send tracers after a certain amount of time where a carrier has not responded to your bill. We can see here that the date is automatically set to 45 days before today's date. That is, it's going to look for everything before 7/09 because that's old enough to run a tracer on. I'll go ahead and hit Create Bills. Again, I'm going to select all for all my criteria. Create Bills again, click Yes. And here we have all our tracer bills. Aside from the type of services it's looking for, there isn't too much different about this section. All the same information here in the fields. When I preview, I get the same looking types of bills, depending on my form type, of course. Again, I can click which ones I want to print, so it's all the same. Let's go ahead and run a rebill. This time we'll select Auto Rebill. An auto rebill will look through the system for bills that have not been paid for, but that do not qualify as tracers. We're going to leave this all as it is. Create bills. Select everybody. And create bills again. And here we have 6 bills that have been auto rebilled. Now this is automated by the system. You just select a few bits of criteria, it searches through, and it brings you back a chunk of information. If you want to rebill specific services, like a single service out of 4 in a previous bill, you can do this manually via the manual rebill. Go ahead and hit plus again to create a new batch. And in billing type, this time we'll select manual rebill. You'll notice that this information has disappeared because it's no longer necessary for this billing type. Click Create Bills and you'll be brought to a new window. In fact, you're actually brought to the Insurance Follow-Up Center. This can also be accessed by the boxing glove at the top here with an INS on it. The Insurance Follow-Up Center has a few details to it that we'll go over in the next video. For now, we're just going to select all carriers, and here you can see a list of all the carriers in the system. When you select a specific carrier, you'll notice that the patients attached to this carrier appear at the bottom. I'm going to select Medicare, and we can see that Fred Kane here has a balance of $82.38 that's over 90 days old for this carrier. When I've selected him, you'll also notice at the top here that this tab has now changed to his name along with his claim name. When I click it, I'm brought to a section that displays all the services that were billed that have not been paid for yet. We can see specific information like the amount of days since it was billed, the original visit date, the amount of days since it was charged, description, CPT code, etc., etc. Most importantly though, we have the bill column right here with some checkboxes. When I check these, a button appears that says Save Manual Bill Data. If I want to rebill all 4 of these services, I will want to check all of them. If I only wanted to bill a few, I could select the ones I wanted. I'm going to select them all for now, and then I'm going to hit Save Manual Bill Data. Here we have a window saying what just happened, in that we created a bill with 4 transactions. And once we're done, we can go back to the first tab, select a new carrier, do a different patient, and rebill their services, or we can simply close out of the screen and see that a bill batch was created for us with Fred Kane services. If I click on it and do a preview, scroll to the bottom, I can see here that the 4 services I just selected in the Manual Rebill or Insurance Follow-Up Center are now here. It's pretty cool. Now before we wrap up the video, there's just one more thing to go over. So far all we've looked at is paper billing. Now there is another form of electronic billing that is not the 837X12, but is another form of electronic billing known as the print image form. If I were to select my form type and go to the eClaim CMS 1500, I would be selecting this type. If you're going to be billing out like this, you just need to know a few different things. First of all, creating a batch is exactly the same. You run through the same process that we've been going through for all of these batches. The first main difference, however, is that instead of the CMS forms, we'll be selecting the eClaim CMS 1500. Because this is an electronic bill, the Tag EB and the No EB buttons become effective. I can click Tag EB, and then you'll see that the print column has a checkbox in it now, and that a confirmation appears saying that X amount of bills, in this case 1, are set to print for electronic billing. Click OK to close it. Now let's say I didn't want to print that at all. I can click No EB, and a similar message appears stating how many bills were cleared from printing. When you go to print, it's the same as printing a paper. You make sure that the column is checked off, and then you click Print Bills. What happens is that a file is automatically generated within the TPS folder. This file is what you'll end up sending out to your carrier or clearinghouse so that they can process it and then pay you accordingly. In the future, if I hit Print Bills again, a question is asked because the file already exists. TPS only ever creates one of these eClaim files at a time. The question is, do you want to append these 1 electronic bills to the file? No equals overwrite. Basically, if I wanted to continue to add to the existing eClaim file, I could append or add to the end of by clicking yes. If I wanted to erase the existing file and create a new one with this bill batch information, I could click no. Most often you're going to be clicking no. The data has now been sent to the file and it's been created. An easy way to locate that file is to go to your desktop, locate the TPS icon on your desktop and give it a right click. Going down to Properties and clicking it, there will be a button in the bottom left over here that says something along the lines of Open File Location. This will lead you straight to the folder where the eClaim file is located. Clicking on it will open that folder. We can navigate and look for the eClaim file right here. It's a simple text document that can be opened in Notepad, so if I double click it, we can see here that the layout is very similar to a HCFA. This is the basis of the print image format. If you have additional questions on how to do your e-billing, please contact Eon Tech Support. And that's all there is to billing.